Happy. Yes.
I'm off.
Yes, you are.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Whatever time of the day, night it is today, it's the 11th of November 2020, and today is the official launch of the Engineering Entrepreneurship program. We've got a fantastic program for you today. We've got some exciting guests. I'll leave Antoine to introduce them to you personally in a second, but I'm just going to give you a little hint, a little sort of play on words. I think you're going to have an Oscar-winning performance, and I think you're going to be hearing from an engineer who's in a Ligeia/league of her own. So we're very, very confident that you've got a great program ahead of you this afternoon. Just take this opportunity for myself and the In Holland team here. We don't see you very often today. Just to say, we hope you're all doing well in these difficult circumstances. You and your families are going okay, and you're looking forward to the program ahead of you. We'll be seeing you again over the weeks to come. But for this afternoon, the purposes of this afternoon, I'm going to hand the baton over to my esteemed colleague, Mr. Herritzen, who will introduce you to our speakers.
Thanks very much, Simon. Welcome also for me. A warm welcome. We have a program for you, and we're, as you can see, experimenting a little bit. So this is via a live YouTube broadcast. So please bear in mind that we are now broadcasting this live. And during the session, we will also have the opportunity to take on questions. Please use the YouTube channel for that. So during the sessions, we will be registering all the questions, and when necessary, we will also intervene the broadcast to live go into these questions. So that's a little bit the setting of today. And as Mr. Paulsen mentioned, we have 2.5 presenters today, 2 from industry and a half Mr. Koetje from the lab itself. We will also present a small project of ours. But we're very glad that we have 2 guests present today, one from the TNO and one from the NLR. And they both will be presenting challenges from the industry and possibly topics for you to take on. So please give a warm welcome to our first guest, and I'll let him introduce himself. Our first guest from TNO, Oscar Zoeterwij.
Hi everyone, thank you Arnold for introducing myself, and it's a real pleasure to be here and share some thoughts with you about not only use cases for the problems we see ahead for us for sustainable transport, but I'm going to share you some ideas about how to get to an idea. But before I go there, I'll shortly introduce myself indeed. Oscar Zoeterwij. I started my career a couple of years ago with the Air Force. I've been flying F-16s for I think about 20 years or so. Did some interesting stuff there in strange countries. Also was heavily involved within the F-35 program and heavily involved in radical innovation within the Air Force. And that's the connection to what I'm going to try to tell you today about innovation stuff and all that nice stuff. After the Air Force, I went to NLR actually to be in the leadership team over there. I did that until about half a year ago. And then I made my step towards TNO, and that was the first time actually that I went outside of the airspace realm. Being F-16 pilot, it's all about flying. Being in the NLR, it's all about flying. Oh, and by the way, I've been flying Boeing 747s as well in Asia, and I've been an entrepreneur along the road somewhere as well. But right now I'm in TNO, outside of the airspace industry, but now in the car industry at traffic and transport, being one of the members of the leadership team over there. And there's still a connection because we're all talking about transport in the broadest sense of the world, and that's why we decided to do this as TNO and NLRs together, because let's talk about transport instead. Let's talk about only aviation or cars in a sense. So that's a short introduction for me, and with that I'll start the presentation. You should be seeing lead slides is on brainstorming with an innovation teaser. And the reason I'm starting with that is because although you have an entrepreneur challenge or stuff like that, and you're going to start making things or you're going to start doing things, the most important thing about getting there is even getting to a good idea. And getting to a good idea needs a lot of attention. That's why I'm going to talk to you about that. So I'll go to the agenda. First, I'm going to give you kind of a teaser on innovation, and it's directly related to that ideation stuff I've just been talking about. And it's a teaser because in December 8th we're going to be back, and we're going to be having a whole story about innovation. And I'll try and will try to mesh your brain up and then put it back together. So that's for December. After that teaser on innovation, I'll talk to you about a brainstorm or how to think together. Because at the end of the day, after you've got that idea, you start working on an idea. It better be a good idea. So you want to spend time on getting to that idea that you really want to maybe change the world with. And when I'm done with that, we got Ligeia, and she's going to talk to you about cases and current market challenges. And between my talk about brainstorm and her cases and market challenges, there will be a small break of about 10 minutes. So I anticipate to talk to you about 45 minutes or so, and then have a small break. If you have any questions, please do so. Chat via the YouTube, and I hope to answer it through the whole presentation. So I'll just get started about the innovation teaser, and I'll make that connection towards the ideas. This is something about innovation. To get to innovation, there's some things needed. First of all is courage, and this is I'm going to be talking about extensively in December. But it's the courage to innovate is very, very important. And then the other thing is skills to innovate. It's not something that you've been born with. It's also something that you need to learn and need to practice in order to get better at it. It's not just some magical thing that you've been born with. So it's really something you need to pay attention with. But I want to focus on that courage to innovate, because sometimes courage is born, and most of the time courage to innovate is born out of just plain necessity. Courage sometimes, you see courage coming up in people because they're in dire situations. People in wars just stand up because they're in a special situation. Now they're heroes, and they wouldn't be recognized as heroes if they wouldn't be in a position that courage was needed. But for innovation itself, to really get there, get to new ideas, to get there you need some critical elements, and those three elements are starvation, pressure, and perspective change. And I think the best example to illustrate that is the picture of the Apollo 13 over there. I guess you all know the Apollo 13. They had an explosion in the capsule, which basically was a problem in the oxygen system, and there were some critical elements that innovation was inevitable, because they were going to die if they weren't going to do something. And if they weren't going to do something and they would be traveling around the moon, they would have been dead. So now there's no question about, you have to come up with an idea. You can't escape it. And now your brain gets into a different mode of thinking and a different mode of doing. And at the end of the day, the engineers on the ground made something that saved the day. And that's the same thing I think that is going on if you look at startup or big companies. Big companies don't generally have starvation. They got too much money. They got all stuff going on, so they have a lot to lose. So there's no starvation going on there. There's not really pressure or perspective change. If I don't innovate, I will cease to exist. That's probably not true. So there's no incentive to do so and think more richly. But in startups, if you're in a startup and you come up with an idea and you got nothing to lose, and you'll have that starvation thought behind in your mind, because not coming up with an idea means you don't get to eat and you don't get to develop. And so that's why what you see in modern times is that because startups have nothing to lose, they come up with the ideas. They come up with innovative ideas. And the bigger companies who's got something to lose, they will just buy you because they just can't come up with those ideas. So that's why starvation and pressure and perspective change is there. Now I can imagine in this school environment, there's not really a starvation, pressure, or perspective change other than maybe your grade at the end of the year. But it might be, let's say, a good thing to think about yourself about how do I create this creative, this critical element of starvation for this assignment, because your brain will go into a different mode. And I call that an escapable necessity. And think about it for yourself. Sometimes we think in ourselves for our own deployment, or we think, I shouldn't be doing this, or I should quit smoking, or I should start doing sports. And you have all those things you think about yourself, and you're really saying it, but you're not doing it. And apparently you can still escape it. And it goes that far if you look in all the investigations into the world. It's very difficult to change behavior. Even heart patients who get pills and are being said, if you take that pill, you'll live. If you don't take that pill, you'll die. Still, more than half of those patients won't take the pills. It's quite mind-boggling to think of that. And so, an inescapable necessity and your own development and choices is there too, because you still can escape it. Sometimes you'll remain doing what you remain doing. And one of the questions is, I was curious about with you guys. Well, how do you curate your inescapable necessity for yourself? Let's say if you want to run a marathon, how do you make that inescapable for yourself? Let's say you need to come up with an idea because I don't know, because otherwise you'll be evicted from your house. Or let's say COVID is striking. What does that mean for your life, and how do you change your life, or how do you get innovative? I'm really curious on how you guys make an inescapable necessity for yourself, but that's just for your own thought right now. One thing that connects to why we're here is creating a sustainable transport system. And the thing about it is, we all think in technical solutions and stuff, but sometimes what I think is, well, is it escapable? And I gave you two pictures. One is, the bottom picture is, I don't know if you can see it, but it's a charging device which is sitting in front of the house in the back. And basically the municipal wanted to put a thing over there, but people started to complain because the thing was in a place that precluded people from parking their car where they always used to be. And so the municipal needed to go somewhere. So there's always reason not to do it. And what I notice is that, yes, we all want to have a sustainable transport system, but at the same time not in my backyard. And so what are we trying to achieve? When do you feel the inescapability of doing this? And that's the tough thing about innovation as well, because sometimes people just don't care, don't want it in the backyard, and you have this great idea, but just people don't connect to it. It's quite difficult as an entrepreneur, I would say. And the other example is, I've been talking to Ligier about this, and this was the charging cable, and this was a direct reason that I'm telling you this. Well, she said, well, look at the charging cables. They're ridiculous because they ruin my nails, and it's not about ruining the nails, but it's about that thought like, yeah, I want it, yeah, we all want it, but if it really gets close to us, maybe not so much. So if you're in your idea phase, you will hear a lot of that. Most people will say, yeah, not really, or they'll say yes, but as long as it doesn't influence their own lives, or they have to change their lives. So I just wanted to share your thought on that. I think the most difficult thing in being an entrepreneur or in developing an idea is that ideation phase with all the problems within there. So my question to you is, and I would like you to answer that via YouTube, I would really appreciate that, is, well, let's assume you have to come up with an idea. Let's assume you can't escape it. You have to come up with an idea. So how do you do that? How do you make that happen? I'm really curious, and I'll be checking out the ideas you guys are coming up with. Yeah.
Is it 20-second delay?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Vaccine? Yeah.
If I tell my wife I'm going to do it.
Tell your wife you're going to do it?
If I tell my wife I'm going to do it, then it becomes an inescapable necessity.
Because your wife is going to bash you for it if you don't. That's a good point. Yeah, yeah.
I hope.
Any other ideas? Brainstorm as many as I can without a filter and see what works. Yeah. Check the news for existing problems. Sure. Look around you for possible problems to fix. Sure. Searching for the gap in the market. Yeah. Searching for a gap in the market would identify something to come up with an idea, but now you have to come up with an idea, right? Or you will never hear the end of it from her. Yeah. That's for you, I guess, Simon. Criticize your surroundings. I don't know what you mean with that, Danielle. Making a team and try to come up with ideas. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Start with the subject and elaborate on that with multiple people. Yeah. Talk to people that are directly influenced by the products. I think that's a very good idea. Look around on the internet for problems and solutions. Yeah, so the solution is already there. If you need to come up with an idea, of course, build on what other things people already build on. Ask people around you what will improve their lives. Look at recent inventions and use it as inspiration. Yeah, build on others. It's very good. Use the product yourself and see what doesn't work. That's good as well. So you come up with an idea, try it and then reiterate it. And then Marco, think of problems that you of the people around find very annoying and think of solutions. Yeah, that's problem finding. I'm still curious about criticize your surroundings. Is that Daniel? I don't understand it. Can you elaborate on that maybe? Research shortcomings and brainstorm for a solution. Yeah. Yeah. I guess Daniel's. We'll leave it at that. Yeah. So thanks. So a lot of the inputs are more or less about finding a problem, and most are getting a team, or brainstorm, or build on innovation you already seen and stuff. Ask people as well. The thing about asking people, people don't know how far technology is, and sometimes they don't know what to ask for and what is possible. So that's one of the things that you as an innovator or entrepreneur comes in, using newest technology with new means to use it. Oh, Daniel, just as Margaret Roseman said, and that was yeah. Thank you very much, Daniel. And start with a certain technology and find where it could be implemented. Yeah, start with certain. Okay, that's a very good one, brother Daniel. We'll come back to that in our innovation talk in December, exactly about this. So keep that thought. Thanks for the inputs. Oh, blackmail the CEO of a company to fix your problem. Yeah, the CEO comes up with an idea. I don't know. I like your way of thinking, though, Wesley. Awesome. Let me continue with that. Thanks for the inputs. One of the answers that you got up is a way to get an idea is a brainstorm, and I put a subtitle on that saying, "Oh dear, not again." And the reason I did that is I don't know about your experiences, but my experiences is if we get together to get to a certain idea, or if we get together for a problem, I've been walking around more often than not, walking away from it saying, "This sucked. Nothing came out of it," or very, very surface-wise ideas, or it just didn't feel like a lot of value. And I think most brainstorms, at least to me, feel like that. And that's something that I want to elaborate on you. So what I'm trying to give you is kind of food for thought on your brainstorm, if you're going to use a brainstorm for getting ideas after your talk with Ligea. So here we go. The traps of a brainstorm. First, I don't know if that's familiar to you, but the usual suspects say the usual things. Imagine yourself at a table or in a room or so with 10 people, and most of the time, in my experience, out of those 10 people, 3 or 4 people are dominating the conversation, saying the same things over and over again. Someone says A, and the other says B, and the other says A again, and then but just a little bit louder, and then the other says B a little bit louder. It's just a conversation of 4 men in a company of 10. The usual suspect say the usual things. And those other people, other 6 who have generally good ideas, are maybe not really heard. And I think that's a big trap of brainstorming. The other one is problems are poorly framed. I think when I get into a brainstorm and you sit in a room and somebody says, well, this is the problem, what's your idea and what's the solution? I think that's a very poorly framed way of getting to a brainstorm, because it just what it does, it allows your brain to go into a very easy mode, saying, well, I can come up all kinds of ideas which are on the surface, but it doesn't need to work hard to get to an answer to that. You won't get a lot of creative ideas from that, I guess. And sometimes the room gets silent and nobody's got an idea, and then somebody comes up with an idea, and you get into that conversation that 3 or 4 people come up with an idea, but the other 6 people don't. So framing is a thing. I think, thinking outside the box is actually detrimental of a good brainstorm. It's a question of rightly framing your conversation and your brainstorm. And I'll get back to that, how to do that. The other thing is, what I used to be noticing in brainstorm is it turns into critiques. Somebody comes up with an idea, and then the other one says, well, that idea is really stupid. Or, no, that's not really true because this and this already happened. Or, no, that's not a good idea, this is a good idea. And it turns in critiquing each other instead of just listening to each other and without and listening to the ideas and where the ideas come from. Because, and so it becomes more like a critique thing. And the one with the loudest voice or something like that wins the brainstorm, as if you can win a brainstorm. And the other thing is, I think that mostly frustrates, at least for myself, but I also heard from others, is brainstorms tend to people tend to have some reservations through brainstorms, but because 9 out of 10 times people just don't know what's going to happen with those ideas. You get to a brainstorm, and when you talk about certain things, you walk outside the room and you never hear about it again. Yay. That's awesome. Not so much. Not so much. And now you got all those ideas and they're just laying there in the bucket and nothing's going to happen. And the next brainstorm is the same thing. So brainstorm makes more work, and the organization is going to kill all these ideas anyway. So the effect of wanting to be in a brainstorm is not really there, because people think, well, nothing's going to happen anyhow. So it's not clear what's going to happen with the ideas. And that does demotivate. So, having all said it, does that sound familiar to you guys, or do you guys have other experiences with brainstorms? I'm curious. Simon, you brainstorm with your wife. How does it look like?
Yeah, I feel I need to commit publicly to things. That's what. That's my that inescapable necessity. I need to say to people, and then I feel a little bit of sort of positive pressure to do something. In terms of brainstorming, I think absolutely what you say is familiar. That you hear people criticising things very quickly, even if they know that the rules of brainstorming deny it. We can't, and I include myself. You can't resist the temptation
right.
quite often to make filtering judgments.
Right,
and
exactly.
I recognise that in myself.
Yeah. Let's see. Small teams work better for it. Yeah, Guy. Any other experiences on brainstorms? Very familiar from Camilla. Thank you. Antoine, your experience in brainstorms?
I have difficulties in brainstorm because most of my brainstorms are with technical people, and especially with technical people we tend to first address all the requirements and the impossibilities, and
that's right.
So in the end of my brainstorms, normally we know exactly why 90% of the ideas don't work.
Well, that's very
frustrating.
it's very familiar, and that's one of the subjects exactly we're also going to talk about in December. Why that is, and why that is actually almost unavoidable, and what you can do about it. Let's see. Sounds familiar. Most of the time, ideas also turn into discussions about how they don't work. Yeah, instead of building up to something that does work. Yeah, I agree with that. Arnold Kutje, visiting a bar pre-COVID, of course, gave a lot of solutions. Sometimes the solutions lack the problem. Yeah, I can see that. It sound awesome, the solutions, you know, and you go home. And Daniel, or the one not paying attention. The one who's silent in the group is often the one with the best idea. Yeah, Tom, I think that really connects to, you know, the usual suspects say the usual things. Or the one not paying attention. Yeah, would be well as well. I don't know if you're talking about yourself, Daniel. I hope not. So thanks for that. But I'll continue on that. And what I'm going to do now is, so what can you do about this? How can you make it better? I'll first say something about the usual suspects say the usual things. Keep the group small and diverse. I'll just give you these things, and then afterwards I'll elaborate on these issues. So this one, I think somebody said it as well. Keep the group small. The second thing is, problems are poorly framed. So don't invite people to think outside the box. Frame the challenge using trigger questions, and I'll get back to trigger questions later on, because it forces your brain to go into a different mode. Brainstorm turn into critiques, just as Anton said, or just as Sepram has said. And what you can do for that is have a set of ground rules. The way you conduct a brainstorm. If you frame that brainstorm in a certain way, you'll avoid to getting it into a critique. And the other one is, this is more from a company mindset. You know, if the idea is, well, brainstorm, nothing's going to happen anyhow, well, who do you want to have to be in the brainstorm that it's going to happen? And so within companies, for example, there must be a financial commitment to explore current reality, and a team to develop alternate futures, and a sponsor with track record of courage. You have to have the right people in there also to make it go forward. And, you know, somebody who's got say about money. If you're there in a brainstorming and there's nobody there about to say about money, it will die. And so let's say you come up with 3 ideas, and the guy or girl with the say about money is saying, well, this is our limit. Maybe 1 or 2 ideas drop off, but the 3rd idea can run. And you've got commitment from the company as well. So it's very important to have the right people over there. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Let's first dive into the keep the group small and diverse. I think there's this misunderstanding, at least to me, there's this misunderstanding. If you think in a group, or if you think together, you come up with more rich ideas. And I think the opposite, actually. And that has to do with the way group thinking works. If you're together with a group, and you're there for 15 minutes, you'll unnoticeably start aligning. And it's not something that you really can influence. But at a certain way, the people over there start aligning in an unconscious way. And so if somebody says, well, this is my idea A, and the other says B, you know, there's a very likelihood that the third one will build on A, or will say A or B. There's this movie on the internet somewhere. This is a very famous physiological experiment in which there's 13 people sitting over there. 12 are within the complete, and the 13th is not, and they're all sitting on a row. And the first on the row is asked the question. I don't know the exact question, but I think the question was, what's 5 plus 5? And the first says 11. And then the second says 11. And the third says 11. And the first 12 are all part of the complete. But the 13th says 11. And that's a physiological thing, what happens with group thinking and group pressure. So if you're within a group and start brainstorming, it's a very, you have to take this into account. So group thinking of ideas, in my mind, because you start aligning very quick, you know, some rhythm of ideas are lost. And within the group thinking, you've got illusion of invulnerability. Hey, we're a group, we're with so many people, we know what we need to do, so we come up with the good ideas. And you almost get away with other things that you don't know. The illusion of unanimity, I don't know if that's familiar to you, but a lot of times within groups, when decisions are taken, or when ideas are spoken about and which idea to do is there's an illusion that because of some people are agreeing with it, we all are agreeing with it. And that's a phenomenon that's in every company very visible. And there's the other thing within group thinking. If somebody puts pressure on it, saying, well, we need to have this today, there's no way that we can think more about it, you know, that pressure will force a decision and will force something. And there's also self-censorship. And self-censorship is what I see all the time, is that if you're within a group and 3 or 4 people are having a good idea and totally agree with it and align with themselves, and now there's this question like, are we going to do this? And a lot of people just won't say anything and just censor their own thoughts because they're, you know, kind of feeling pressured of going along with it. And there's this self-censorship within the group that comes along. So my message about it is, a group is a good thing, but there's some explicit disadvantages about it. And so the way to conduct a brainstorm is more based on, you know, getting your individual ideas and get those individual ideas out there, but build on the individual ideas instead of starting to align in the beginning. And something which is really interesting, I think, but if you want to dive deeper into that, is the cause of the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. It's if you look at the way the decisions have been taken over there about how group thinking basically made the decision disastrous, that's a beginning to start. And I thought it was a nice connection to your study. It's almost a must see for yourself how that works, and even in an important environment as that. On small diverse groups, again, does everybody has an opinion? Eh? Somebody said, well, some has the best idea, it might be the silent one or the one who's most not paying attention. Yeah, and it's the way you conduct such a group talk and you give space to somebody to filter out those ideas as well, because in my mind not everybody's opinion has a value, because we're just trying to storm through a brainstorm within an hour and that's it. We only got an hour to make this happen. And diversity, that's the other thing, is if you got like-minded people, let's say for example a class of students from the same study, I'm just saying, and you put them together, yeah, the amount of diversity is already vastly reduced. And the way of thinking is already in a certain way aligned. And so it would be a very nice experiment, and that's what I would do if it was in your shoes. There's a lot of other studies over here. And you might, if you want to do a brainstorm about certain ideas, might involve people from other faculties to think with you. Because they're going to be throwing out ideas that you will never come up with. And that will enrich your discussion. So they don't need to be part of your group, but being part of the brainstorm would, I think, be very interesting. But that takes more courage and takes more effort to do so. And you know, and I was talking about courage to innovate. Here's some courage. So that's on small diverse groups. Trigger questions. So this works. This is about framing the issue. Huh? So trigger question. Instead, in my mind, you want to avoid getting into a room and ask people come up with a good idea, because what happens then is that people will get into a usual way of thinking, which is the least energy. But there you want to really, in my mind, you really engage the brain in more difficult thinking, and you can do that with trigger questions. And trigger questions are prompts for creating innovative ideas. They force you to think outside the box and generate new solutions around a provocative possibility. And how to do that then with trigger questions? So instead of going, hey, come up with a good idea, you can do this. It's something to put you in a different mindset. For example, now you're a student in Holland, but you can also look at a certain problem and saying, hey, I'm now the CEO of Apple. Like for an example, I'm the CEO of Apple. How would he or she approach this problem? And it instantly sets you in a different mindset than you are used to. You have to think different to come up with something like that. So trigger questions are especially meant to do that, to get you into a different mindset, to get you through a different lens. Now, and if you do that with maybe students from a different faculty or so, something like that, you'll get something. Choose an admired company, let's say for Apple, how would Apple solve this? How would another company do that? Or, if the customer would be stakeholder of this company, how would he or she run it? Something like that. If you would gamify it, what would be ideas as well? It forces you to put yourself in a different mindset and a different frame, and that makes it interesting. So these are some examples, and I'll share these slides, of course, for you to check out and to trigger your brain, hopefully. How would Disney solve the transportation challenge? How would they do it? I have no idea. How would Disney solve flying on helium or flying on hydrogen? I have no idea. How would a child solve your problem? And it puts you into different lenses. It forces you out of your own mind and your old habit of thinking, because your brain always wants to go back to the easy way and old habit of thinking, because that costs less energy. So this is something I want to show you. Let's see. If I am the CEO of Apple, do I blackmail myself now? I would love to do that. Yeah. How would you do that? Let's see. Look what take this material and put that looking skin on. Yeah. I'm just checking out what you guys are doing. Yeah, nice documentary on Challenger on Netflix. Yeah. If you come up with an idea with how to blackmail yourself, that would be very innovative, by the way. So let me go back to the trigger questions. This is something, in my experience, how to do that, because it's not only about having a question ready. It takes a lot of work to come up with good questions. And if you quickly come up with trigger questions, you'll get less out of it. If you just really think it through, what kind of trigger questions would force people even to think about it more, or force other things, it's really worthwhile spending time on putting your trigger questions into play. And if you got your trigger questions, show it, and have everybody get 5 minutes to write down their answers. And this is where you want to avoid the groupthink. Instead of, here's the trigger question, let's discuss about it, you ask people about, write the answer down for yourself, because it doesn't get clouded by opinions of others. It's also a little bit more vulnerable, because now you're up to stand as well. And now, put your answer, either on sticky notes or digitally. Just put your answer over there, and then talk through those propositions. So if I was going to be the leader of brainstorm, I'll just take a sticky note, say, hey, this answer A, who's got this answer, and just elaborate on it, without discussion. Just tell me your idea, tell me where it comes from, and that's the end of it. No critiques, not that anybody is getting involved in, but just lay down all the ideas. And let's say we got 10 people then, we got 10 ideas right off the bat, without interference of the group. And now comes the bigger trick. Now you got those 10 ideas again, and now you do it again. Because the first ideas are most of the time the ideas which are on the surface of your mind, and those are the more simple or more obvious answers. But if you now have 10 answers and you can build on those 10 answers, and now we're asking you again, come up with another answer. You'll build on those previous ideas, and your brain has to go in overdrive again. It's a really interesting process. And now you're going into thinking fast, thinking slow. If you don't have anything to read within these times, surely you don't. But it's from Kahneman. It's about thinking fast, thinking slow. It's about triggering your brain, going into different mode, and that's exactly what you're doing with this technique. So that's for that. Just to give you also a sense of how long is that going to take. Well, 2 trigger questions, in my opinion, it easily takes 2 to 3 hours, depending on your brainstorm group. So I'll give away one of the slides already. If you think that the brainstorm is going to be done within an hour, and you think something valuable is going to come out of that, I don't think so. It really is. It's a different beast. So that's something I would recommend on this. And the other thing with ideas is, let's say you come up with your ideas because you're trying to answer a trigger question. There's also going to be ideas in your brain which you say, well, that is a stupid idea. I'm not going to write that down because I'm going to really, be standing there with a really stupid idea. Well, I think the most innovative ideas come from ideas that people thought was a really stupid idea. So it's an art to get those stupid ideas out of there. So make space for worst ideas. So that it's okay to have a worst or a bad idea. That you make space for that. Your extremes are over the top, or thinking, well, there's no technology for that, you can't do it. It's very counterlogical, so I won't say it. So if you think about, well, I'm not going to write that down. Well, write your worst idea somewhere down as well. It might be a treasure. So make space for that too. Bottom line on brainstorming, and I think this is where it is. Let's see. I hope you can read this. It's the brainstorm right now. If you're doing the brainstorm, it's just about getting ideas without judging on it, and restraining yourself from a hypothesis. So it's just the tricky question is just getting 30 ideas over there without even saying, well, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. Just getting ideas over there. That's awesome. And then make space for randomness. Just don't try to steer certain ideas in a certain direction. Start to filter already. Just make space for whatever people are saying with their worst ideas, and just then that's the end of the brainstorm. So the end of the brainstorm is not so much about this is the idea we're going to do. No, the end of the brainstorm is these ideas are what we're going to have. We've got 30 ideas, and now what? And now what? Because nobody knows what's going to happen with those ideas. What you're going to do now? Well, this is the time for concept development. This is the time of looking at all those ideas and seeing what do I think I see. And do it shortly after the brainstorm. You can take the most innovative ideas, combine it, and also there's another step, and I think you get some lessons on it. Combine it also with business logic. Think about the business plan ahead already. Is there a market for it? Start engaging the market for the idea. You could be well finding it a brilliant idea, but it's good to have a sense of the business logic of your idea as well already over there. So to develop that concept, to say, well, I got 30 ideas, and now I want to steer into a certain concept of an idea, or something that I think is really worthwhile making it or progressing with it. Is you got those 30 ideas, you eliminate redundancies, and you just put them together. Oh, these are redundant. You put similar ideas together because there can be similar ideas, and you can also see, hey, what do I miss? It's interesting to see as well. It's not always about what has been said, but sometimes also about what has not been said. It's something to reconsider in looking at all those ideas. And a list of themes that emerge. You might want to put them together in certain themes. Hey, this one is about this one about I don't know about flying as a pedestrian. I don't know, flying as an individual. There could be a theme. Or this one is about I don't know, a transportation system for cars. Or this one is about getting a new tire. Just put it in themes, and then you got them grouped in a certain sense. And maybe you need another brainstorm looking at it, saying, okay, how do we create this combination? What kind of combinations do we think we see? And then from that, I think an initial concept can evolve. So the brainstorm is not the end. Brainstorm is the beginning of your initial development and your concept development. And so just to put that in remark. I'm just checking out what you guys are writing there. It's good to write them down. Yes, it also forces you to really work out the idea because you have to write it down and make sure people can understand what you mean. That's right. See, sometimes it helps to approach ideas from what is most likely way to make this work. Yeah, that's a good idea as well, Guy. So I think we're about almost at the end. Oh, no, not really. The one I really want to address is this one. So I just talked about the trigger questions. I talked about the groups, and diversify it. And the other thing is about preventing it to being critique. Ground rules. And here's an example for you. One voice at a time. Keep it short to the point. Restrain yourself from judging. Build on the ideas of others. And it's a very simple thing to say in front of your brainstorm meeting, but it's very effective just to get to avoid critiques, because otherwise it will happen. So you can use this as well. So the Zen of brainstorming. The right people. Who do you get in the people? I would surely recommend getting people from different faculties in your storm. Small, diverse, depoliticized. And depoliticized, what I mean is that there's no second agenda from people sitting over there. And there's no something like that. The right challenge. So the focus point. What's the focus point of your brainstorm? The right mindset. So to build, not to tear down. So not to critique, but just to listen without prejudgment. The right stimulus. The trigger question that stimulates your brain into different modes that is hardly used during the day, a normal day. The right facilitation and the right follow-up. And it all boils down to your planning. It all boils down to thinking ahead of your brainstorm to really get value out of it. And this is, I think, the most important thing. If you're in your entrepreneurship challenge, I think it's an underestimated factor of your entrepreneurship challenge. So I really, that's why I'm basically telling you this as a train of thought. Yeah, so there's no such thing as a valuable 1 hour brainstorm. And your working preparation is directly related to the value of the outcome of your brainstorm. And I think that concludes my briefing. I hope it was of value of you, and you can work with it. You can see the slides and stuff, and it helps you out with your entrepreneurship challenge. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And I'm going to take the next couple of minutes to bring you into another dimension. I think it was really useful to see what Oscar presented on thinking processes for coming up with really great solutions to difficult problems and challenges. And as I noticed also during the chat, it may seem easy, but it's actually not that easy. So it's now going to be up to you to actually do it fairly soon. And hopefully you're able to set the right climate to come up with these great solutions. Speaking of climate, I think that's actually the segue to my presentation, and I'll ask Ruben, our technical guy that you actually can't see in the background, but he's also sitting there a couple of meters away from me, to start the presentation as he just did. Because today I really would like to bring you into the dimension that we're currently heavily involved in, also on behalf of Aeronautical and Precision Engineering. And I'm talking about sustainable aviation. You can imagine that if you look at all the markets out there, well, basically the whole society, there's this huge challenge in terms of, okay, how are we going to deal with the climate crisis that we're facing, that we're already facing? At the moment it's COVID, but everyone is sending all these nice comics on the social media channels about all kinds of waves we can expect in the future. And I don't want to scare you off, definitely not. However, I think there's a general recognition for the whole problem on climate and the amount of emission that we're injecting into our atmosphere. So in order to achieve sustainable aviation, which is actually a goal that also the Dutch government laid out, which is in about 50 years we would like to be zero or emission neutral. And that's going to be quite a task for us to accomplish. So on behalf of Aeronautical and Precision Engineering at in Holland, we also are committed to that challenge, and are now in the middle of developing a curriculum for the future for that will also support and embrace all the needs to develop knowledge to further help on the whole aspects, all the aspects of sustainable aviation. Not just for aviation, of course, there's other markets to consider as well. But for this study program, we're we're actually planning now to start rolling that out early or in the start of school year 2021. And in order to do that, we require learning by doing projects, because that's the mental model that we use around here. You can sit in a bench, you can read a good book, but at the same time, when you really do something in a project, then you will learn a lot more about that. So that's really the atmosphere and what we would like to offer education in. And the first learning by doing project is Project Dragonfly. And I hope by now everyone is already familiar with the project. something that we started in 2019, and we're expecting to see some really awesome things in 2021 and 2022. Hopefully it will then fly around that time as well. So if you look at the horizon in the Netherlands, we're not the only ones actually doing something about this. We will also not be able to achieve emission-free aircraft just by looking at small airplanes and electric propulsion or battery-driven vehicles. We have to look beyond that, of course. But for now, this is the low-hanging fruit that we can really do something about. So really great to see there's some partners in the Netherlands working on that. If you look at on the global scale, and then really zooming into the, let's say, fixed-wing aircraft, there's these look-alike aircrafts now working on similar solutions using similar technology. So batteries, electric powertrains, hydrogen is now also being considered. Zero Avia, one of the leading companies in that, is now really making big steps there. The TU Delft with Aero Delft as a team is now also working towards introducing liquid hydrogen, which is another big step. So we're really looking forward to that. So that's Project Dragonfly. If you think of that project, it's the first learning by doing project, but hopefully we can start introducing more learning by doing projects, and perhaps the Engineering Entrepreneurship minor is a good startup vehicle for that. Speaking of vehicles, airplanes are not the only ways to transport yourself. We have to look. We have to look in the whole range of mobility instead of just airplanes. So perhaps there is an idea in Project Dragonfly or sustainable aviation that is appealing to you, where you think, okay, but if we're smart about it and then we repackage it right, why don't we come up with this great solution? Of course, you have to relate it to a problem as well. But as I said, sustainable or achieving zero emission is a goal. But the problem is the environment. So there you go. It's not that easy, or not that difficult. Solar panels on cars. Lightyear 1 is really making big steps there. So perhaps there's something we can do on that for other forms of mobility as well. If you look at the aviation fleet in the Netherlands, about 15% of the aviation fleet is electrifiable. Well, that means with the current technology that we have available, such as you can see in this video that I'm going to start now. I hope it works. Yes, there it goes. You can see an electric motor being driven by Jonas, and this is actually this motor is very similar to the Pipistrel aircraft that has just been certified to fly in Europe, certified by EASA. So the ingredients are getting there, are now becoming accessible as well. If you look at other suppliers, and these are just a few of the many that are out there, but these are actually near us in the Netherlands, and they actually supply all these ingredients. But we still have to find smart people that come up with smart solutions to address these challenges that we have. So perhaps there's something in there for you. I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. I'll stop here. I'm not saying that this is the type of challenge that you have to focus on for your engineering entrepreneurship project, but perhaps there is something in there that you would really like to start working on. So good luck. I wish you well, and I'll be asking Antoine to take over from me because I think he has a closing word before we go to a break. Is that right, yes. Antoine? So over to Antoine. Just a second. Yes, there you are. Yeah.
Yes. So this was our first or 1.5 part of this session for today. We're going to have a 10-minute coffee break, I think. So or 15 minutes. Let's make it 15 minutes. So at 3:10 we will be back with the second part of this lecture, and that will be from the NLR side of the matter. So grab a cup of coffee, and we see you in 15 minutes. Okay, welcome back everyone for the second part of this engineering and entrepreneurship minor. We're first going to address two of the questions posted on YouTube. I think the first question from Max, relevant question, how do we brainstorm during Corona time? And in all honesty, we were discussing this question, and I do not think that we have a fixed answer for you. So there's some advantages in doing it online, meaning that if you start to do the post-its, you can be assured that everyone is posting what they want without the conflicting of seeing others. On the other hand, especially during brainstorming, it's good to have also some form of interaction. So that's difficult online. What I want to share with you is that recently, last week, we did an online brainstorm with the NAC, the Netherlands Aerospace Group, where we started to post really the yellow stickers online. It was fun to do. You can have software for that online, so look it up. In all honesty, I must also say that the outcome was a little bit limited, so we need to gain some experience. So I think it's up to you to do that. So we don't have a fixed answer, but we have some ideas, but please explore them. And the second question was related to the aerospace subject. In the blog book, it's mentioned that the topic needs to be aerospace related. We're going to see that in the broad sense of the subject, meaning that aerospace might also be mobility. So if the topic is sustainable mobility related, we deem that it fits the engineering and entrepreneurship minor. So that's the answer to both questions. Then this is the moment I want to give the word to Ligeia from the NLR. She will present herself and enjoy the presentation. Ligeia, to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are. So my name is Ligeia Paletti. I work for NLR about 3 years now. Bit about myself. I am an aerospace engineer by trade. I actually love everything that flies. If it doesn't fly, it doesn't interest me, which is kind of tricky considering the presentation I'm going to give you afterwards, but I will make a compromise for today. I now in NLR responsible for implementing circular economy aspects in aviation. So that connects a bit with the discussion Arnold gave about sustainability in aviation. That will be my main topic. And next to that, I am responsible for the NLR Living Lab, where we try to implement what Oscar pitched to you before, all this brainstorming and out-of-the-box thinking and be creative. That's where NLR tries to do those kind of things. But today I want to connect to what Arnold and Oscar mentioned before on, okay, now that you have all this, Arnold already gave you some ideas on what to think about in terms of assignments for your minor, and I want to give you a bit more ideas. And as Antoine just framed, my perspective, it needs to fly. But yeah, nowadays, given the circumstances, unfortunately, including myself, we are limited in our movements. And I mean, this situation gave, a good opportunity also for the aviation world to rethink itself. And so decided to, also given the presence of Oscar from TNO, about future of mobility. So it's going to be sustainable, it's going to be in the future, and it has to be about mobility. This said, this is how NLR sees the future of mobility. And you might have seen it in a lot of sci-fi movies. You're going to have flying taxis all around in your cities. You're going to have all sorts of crazy solutions that you might have seen around already. But this in particular case is like NLR's view on how the future of mobility, especially in cities, is going to be. And yes, it's beautiful, it's the future, it's going to happen. We don't know, we really don't know, but there are a lot of people really looking into that. It is like an interesting thought, because you need to think of this like compared to how we travel nowadays. So how do we travel nowadays? Well, when we fly, we think of something like this, like a A380, 600 people on it, flying incredibly long distance, and you have an amount of passengers to get in the plane, you need to get them out. How does that work with the future of aviation and all these flying little vehicles in the air within a city? Well, when you move in a city and you have a lot of people to move around, what's public transportation? So you get the buses, you get the subways, you get trains. Again, a lot of people all at the same time. And like that they need to get in and out. Nowadays it's also tricky given like the health concerns everybody is facing. So how do you compromise the two things? Well, of course, like when you have a lot of money, there are already private solutions. So you can just park your nice helicopter on your boat, and that will move you around in the city, whatever schedule you want. You don't need to just be at the airport at a certain time. But is the ticket something that is affordable for everybody? No, it's not. And so, yes, there are already solutions that you could compare to this NLR future of mobility, but they're not really for everybody. On the other hand, nowadays, what is everybody doing is just getting in the car and getting stuck in traffic. So also there, it's like there are the ways that we are doing now, and there is how we think the future will be. And there is the airplanes, and somehow we want to make airplanes flying from 30,000 feet to like 30 feet from the ground, and that's kind of a jump. And on the other hand, you have the cars, and you want to make them, well, going from 0 meter from the ground to like 10 or something. So it is an interesting word to combine, and that combines also issues that both worlds have been having. So this is like bottom line. It's like, how do you combine the most beautiful planes and the most beautiful cars into the future of mobility? There are already a lot of solutions. So the NLR view that I gave you was just like a rendering from an artist. But there are a number of companies like Palvi actually put like a propeller on top of a car. And there are like companies like Hyang that they are actually developing like a small 1-2 seat vehicle directly for urban air mobility use. If you Google concepts about urban air mobility and the future of mobility, you could see like endless concepts, absolutely endless concepts. And so, of course, like for your assignment, you can think of a new concept, fair enough. If you can think of something like that between now and January, respect. But that's of course a solution. On the other hand, like when you think of the picture I gave you with all those small vehicles flying around in the city, there are a number of other problems that can be interesting for you to look at and that can inspire you for your minor. So I have like 6 groups of problems for you. I will go through them. If you do have questions, of course, put them in the chat. And that's just inspiration. You can take them from a car perspective, you can take them from an airplane perspective, and you can take them from whatever urban air mobility future is going to be. That's expanding already the scope and answering the question already. So first, the energy transition problem. So already with Arnold, we've been hearing about the future of sustainability in aviation. We're going to use hydrogen, we're going to use batteries, we're going to use something else. I have a colleague who's really keen into using nuclear propulsion, actually. Fair enough. But nowadays, what we do, we just tank a car. Well, I think like all of us are familiar with the idea. Well, what do you do, for example, with the Pipistrel aircraft that NLR launched a few days ago? there is a set of batteries that need to be recharged, and the same thing for like Tesla cars. Like, okay, you just need to charge batteries somehow. But yeah, are those the only options? It's just charging batteries is the only option. Electric batteries are the only option. Hydrogen, what else? As said, this is like a topic that is really hot, because there are a lot of people thinking and trying things, and nobody has a clear answer. Batteries could last up to a certain distance. Hydrogen seems better, but there are a number of climate consequences in using it. So perhaps the real solution is like a third way that nobody has thought of it yet, and that's up to you to come up with it. I don't know. Connected to the energy transition is the endurance of the batteries. That like, how long can you fly? How far can you drive on a battery charge? That's still limited. But on the other hand, there are the aspects, like also Oscar mentioned, about my nails breaking up on the charging the car. I mean, the cable of charging like an electric car is the main solution nowadays, but it's, my perspective, not particularly convenient. It will not stop me from buying an electric car, but it is not like the ideal solution. There's a number of options about like wireless charging cars that are more difficult, but in this visual of NLR, again, we connected flying vehicles with a cable. Do we really need to? How can you charge it? How can you convince people to buy an electric vehicle and use it in a way that fits them? So that's the second topic for you to think about. The third one is about safety. Well, what we do with cars, well, we just test them. We crash them against a concrete wall, and then we verify that well, it's safe for us to step in the car, and if anything happens, we make it out of it in one piece. Same thing for aircraft. There's a number of tests that need to be done before it's safe to fly. A lot of the solutions presented nowadays for like urban air mobility, for future of mobility, they don't look particularly safe to me. I will not feel safe in flying in the one on actually like the winners of the GoFly prize. So how do you combine those aspects? Well, like shall we come up with some sort of parachute for each passenger? Do you want to have, I don't know, a sort of balloon around you? Like, how can you make new mobility safer? And related to that, it's also about comfort. So yeah, so I'm safe, I feel safe, but like, am I also comfortable? Everybody's always talking like, oh, I'm buying a new car and it's such a comfortable seat, and there's like the heating in the seat, and it's large, and I can have my cup of coffee, and then we board the plane, and the first thing we all complain about is the limited space in between the seats, because, well, normal people don't fit. So the comfort for passengers, cars, bus, airplanes, it is a very important aspect. Like we are making phone calls nowadays from our cars. Please don't just, use your mobile while driving. Use like a headset, please. Don't want to be responsible for you. And there are a number of airlines already offering similar services that you can stay connected while flying. If you are, for example, I'm using as example Project Alaria, when NLR was also involved, it doesn't particularly look like you can have a phone conversation there. So there can be a solution for that, some sort of system that you can think of. The other hand, in terms of comfort, we're also talking like, okay, how would you board such a vehicle? Now we're all used like climb the stairs and get in a plane, or just open the door and get in the car. How convenient would it be, how comfortable would it be to climb into one of those urban air mobility concepts? Is it something like people with disabilities can do? There's a number of aspects that need to be thought of as well. Other logistic aspects, how do you integrate those vehicles in a city environment? Now we park our cars on the street, even if it's getting more and more difficult. A lot of cities are trying to be car-free, so they create garages and parking spaces. So how would you handle that? I mean, would you really be able of parking your urban air mobility vehicle on your rooftop? Yeah, and would it work? I mean, Dutch house is not particularly designed for that. And if you look at a lot of concepts about heliports, they look like on very, very high buildings. I mean, how would you get to such a equivalent of the airport when it's raining, when it's windy? Would it be a pleasant experience for the passengers? Those are all aspects like, okay, can we think of something to help passengers to get in there? Are we really going to have heliports on top of buildings? So comfort, safety, the energy aspect. It's already 4 topics that we can think of. Connected to the cities, like acceptance of those vehicles. And again, like of course, it's a beautiful futuristic image that we do have, and we saw a number of sci-fi movies, a bit old perhaps, classics, but like Blade Runners, like that you see cars flying around. Is that acceptable? I mean, you will be like in your room, like on the 5th floor, and just look outside and you will suddenly see a car. That's not something that we are used to. We are used to have cars like on the ground level and aircraft very high in the sky, unless, well, you live close to landing strip. Then how would it work when cars will be like moving at multiple levels and there might be no like visual? You will not have a view from your window. Is that something like acceptable? Noise, again, like right now on the ground level, you get a lot of traffic noise, and it gets less if you are, for example, having an apartment facing a garden instead of the street. But like with the flying around vehicles, I mean, are vehicles going to be limited flying like on equivalent of streets? Are they will be allowed flying everywhere? Nobody knows. I mean, if it's like personal mobility, then people may just want to, land in their own garden, and there will be impact on all neighbors. Those are a lot of aspects that perhaps don't connect to like us as engineers, but we need to start thinking that we're not only engineers. Now you guys are studying towards that, but like first of all, we are people. We are persons. We enjoy our own quiet. We enjoy our Sundays in the garden with no noise. How will having all those vehicles going around impact us? And last, maintenance. I mean, aircraft are undergoing very regular maintenance schedules. Like you buy your aircraft and it comes with a big book telling you what to check and when to check it, and that's the safest thing to do if you want to keep your aircraft in the sky. And you buy the car, well, that becomes already more flexible. If you want to stay with the warranty from the car producer, you will take the car regularly to the garage for after a specific number of kilometers or within a certain date. But you can see that as cars get older, well, people start like to think like, is it really worthwhile to take the car to the garage? There starts to be like an element of personal judgment in it on when it's necessary to do or not to do maintenance in your car, except of course like the mandatory checks that, well, national governments enforce. Aircraft in that direction tend to stay on more safe side, that there's not much escape out of your manual of repairs and your schedule. But you see, if you are familiar with the history of aviation, you see a number of accidents that happen because, well, again, also there, people try to save, to cut corners and like avoid doing maintenance that was considered as unnecessary. And we're talking like vehicles that are kind of like, they function in a sort of routine way. Cars just drive and, well, you kind of have your own driving style, and that tends to be standard. Aircraft, well, we're not talking pilot aircraft, like fighter aircraft now, we're talking civil aircraft tend to be kind of regular pattern, there's not much else going on. But if you think of those small vehicles like flying around, like nobody has a view how they are going to be used. Like what wind they're going to face, like what maneuvers are they going to do. It's like, okay, how are the way that we use urban air mobility vehicles going to impact how often we need to go to maintenance and what type of maintenance is necessary. Also there, at that point, how will we do the maintenance? I mean, it's going to be like taking these flying cars to a garage, as the garage coming to you. Like now we do the swap fits concept, that when anything happens to your bike, you don't need to go anywhere, but the service is coming to you. Those issues are also going to be of importance for urban air mobility. So as said, not topics really about like, oh, please think along and give me another concept of urban air mobility vehicle, but more like problems, challenges around the concept. Summary for you, so you don't need to remember everything. So as I mentioned, it was about energy transition, it was about the endurance and let's say the autonomy of your vehicle, safety, comfort, acceptance, social acceptance, maintenance, and we we got like a additional philosophical assignment, which could kind of open the door for you to think of, okay, I'm not really into thinking along with Arnold on the sustainable aviation and the Dragonfly. I don't really care much about the future of mobility and urban air mobility, but I really have a problem, and I want to create this inescapable necessity for myself to use sustainable transport system. It could be like, how do I force myself to use the bike more? How do I take advantage of the fact that nowadays we are asked not to travel? Can I come up with a more brilliant solution instead of having a camera recording, being on YouTube, chatting, being on Teams? Antoine, I mentioned a number of software where you can have brainstorm. I mean, if that's your problem, well, you can think in that direction as well, because the question there is like, how would you create your own? And that's for you only. It's not mine, it's not Antoine's, it's like your inescapable necessity in terms of sustainable transportation. This said, so Oscar gave you some thoughts about innovation, about brainstorming. I try to inspire you, think along with me on, okay, how do we solve a number of problems connecting to urban air mobility? And now, well, we need your ideas. So that's what I had to say to you. I hope it was inspiring, and if there are questions, thanks.
Fantastic. Yeah, am I now audible? Yeah. Animal, vegetable, mineral. Good afternoon again, everyone. And in normal circumstances, I know you'd all be applauding and shouting and coming down to speak to Ligier and to Oscar, running down the auditorium to come and have a chat. Not possible this afternoon, but if you want to give a sort of visible applause to them both, feel free, and let me encourage you to do that. And let's just have 10 seconds of appreciation, please, if we can. I think we should. We're clapping. It's a little bit like a sort of North Korean rally. We're clapping ourselves, but that's the way we have to do it. And just a little bit of a summing up from myself and Antoine, if I can, please. I've had a fantastic day myself. I can't speak highly enough. I've been on 2 stage internship visits this morning, one to Bulgaria and one to Madrid, and talking to people in the business there. And this afternoon, the inspiration session from our colleagues and our partners at the launch of this event. And I was just picking up on a couple of themes that have been developed this afternoon. Obviously the technical aspect, but the communication aspect, the human interaction aspect, the motivational aspect, the ideation aspect, the diversity aspect. And for me, as a sort of non-technical guy, also both from Oscar and from Ligier, that idea of us as agents of change, potential agents of change. We have a role, and us as doers, but also us a little bit as consumers. So the themes that you're going to be developing over the next months, we help share the creation process, but we also experience them and take the benefits from them. And that for me was quite a big deal. Also a little bit from Oscar's bit, I promise I won't go on too long. I really, that diversity thing, you know, for me, a guy who's been working in education, international education for 20 years now, yeah, I mean, if ever anyone was skeptical about that, they just shouldn't be anymore. It's proven, it's researched, and people like me feel it every day, and you feel it every day because you're working in diverse teams. So that was quite a strong message for me, and one very appropriate to you, our audience this afternoon. Now I'm going to pass over to Antoine. You'll be grateful to hear that. And we were just talking about the types of mobility, Antoine. So I'll throw the ball over to you in a rugby pass. And you hopefully catch it. Thank you very much. You caught it. You run with the ball, sir.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, I think what Simon just mentioned there is important, and I want to focus now on the situation for you. We've been seeing in the questions, and we're actually now on YouTube due to the Corona crisis. But actually the Corona crisis is also an enabler, I think, and especially for your EE project. And I can give an example on that. If you told me that half a year ago or a little bit more, that I was broadcasting a YouTube class in front of my students on an EE minor, I think none of us would have participated because it's not our cup of tea. Yet here we are, broadcasting a YouTube session with companies involved, institutes involved. We even have a video editor around the back screen.
Hi, Ruben.
So I think Corona made this possible. It's not the best way in teaching, but it made it possible. And that is actually the same for aerospace or mobility. If we look at the situation today, it's a story I often tell these days, but if we look normally from time to time I go to France, and if I pass by this airport, and I now forgot the name of the airport. No, not Charles de Gaulle. A little bit, the smaller one, a little bit further. I forgot the name. I will think of it in a moment here. But when you pass by there, it's normally a small airfield. But when you pass by now there, you see A380s standing there. And the first time I passed by, it was 6 A380s standing with British Airways. And the last time we passed by, there were 10 A380s parked over there. So I immediately started my Google search to see how many A380s British Airways got, and they got about 12. So 10 were parked. And I think that's it's the current situation. In my opinion, aerospace is not coming back as it ever was. I think we're on the verge of an era where new concepts will be launched and also will be used. So I recently spoke with our colleagues from the TU Delft, the Dean Henry Wery, and he also says we had the Wright brothers and we're now looking for the new Wright brothers. We know how to fly, but we now need different concepts in air mobility, in mobility in each sense. And you have the ability to do this. The students, the jobs are going to change in aerospace. Aerospace is going to change, but whole mobility is going to change. And I think this project is even a chance for you to pick up to pick up a project that might be even your future development. So let's see this as an opportunity, and I thank the NLR and TNO for sharing their food of thoughts. We all have a lot of food for thoughts, but it's now up to you to pick up this challenge. So go for it, and let's make this one of the most the biggest EE we ever had. I'm going to check. Yes, and again, Max has a valid point, Simon. It was a forward pass, Simon. It was a forward pass, and that's not allowed in rugby.
I'm sorry,
So,
you're quite correct. Yeah, but
I'll, if you don't mind, I'll pass it backwards.
it's coming back to me.
And let's do. Thank you all. Thanks Oscar from TNO. Thanks Ligea from the NLR.
Absolutely.
And we hope you enjoyed this broadcast. And on that bombshell, I think
good night, I think.
we say good night.
See you next week, my friends.
See you next week.
The Aeronautical and Precision Engineering program at In Holland University of Applied Sciences in Delft educates people in the broad spectrum of aerospace technology and high-tech sectors. Sustainable approaches need more attention in the world around us and require good professionals who know how to apply the latest innovations. During the course, the following 4 educational themes will help you become a Bachelor of Science in Aeronautical and Precision Engineering. Performance, structures, manufacturing, and smart systems. You will get a proper amount of theory which you can put into practice by doing projects. In these projects, you will get the chance to do assignments for real companies, a great way to stay connected to actual challenges from the aerospace and high-tech industry around us. The personal and social atmosphere makes your time at In Holland really valuable, and you will quickly feel at home here.